Sheri Oneal. Unfortunately, I'm unable to make the turnip green art opening, but I did want to give you a little bit of an overview of myself as an artist, as well as the work that you'll see in the show. Most all of my work is made from repurposed items. I like collecting old thrown away objects, things from garage sales, trinkets and things that I find along the way that I feel are interesting. Growing up as a child, my mom had several antique stores, and I spent a lot of time in grade school hanging out in those shops and stores looking over the antiques. And I always wondered what was the history behind those pieces. So I do like to incorporate broken things, aged things, worn things into my work. My mom is a businesswoman. She taught me everything I know about running a business, and I've been self-employed most of my life. My father was a creative person. He built every house we lived in. He restores old cars, builds furniture, and he's really good with his hands. I think I picked up all of those skills of wanting to use power tools, wanting to repurpose things, because my father did that with a lot of the items that he made, and I spent a lot of time in his workshop with them. The pieces of art that I have in this show, listed under Heartscapes as the title, really represent my life back in 2001. I moved up to Nashville, Tennessee after going through a difficult divorce and started from scratch. I was trying to figure out who I was after 10 years of being married to that person and being really broken down. I was reinventing myself. I was going through the grief of the relationship, and I was going through the confusion of starting over with trying to determine what direction I wanted my career to go. I used art as a way of therapy to get myself through those difficult few years. And all of the pieces, with the exception of two, come from that particular time in my life. Most all of my art is created from found objects. I love rusty nails, old string and twine, chipped paint, anything that shows age. I'm drawn to assemblage art and mixed media art. So the very first piece that I created was made from a piece of found wood. I had some old medical books that I'd picked up at a garage sale, and I had some old saw blades. So what I've decided to do is write a lot of my thoughts onto the wood as part of the art. The piece includes torn pages from the medical book that I burnt around the edges, and I like the progression of the drawings of the human body. This art piece came to be as part of my growth or rebirth, and I felt like those pictures of the body from skeletal to muscular represented my life in that moment. So I really connected with that. I named this piece of art Slice of Life because it felt like it was a slice of my life, but it also incorporated those metaphors of growth. I was going through a really hurtful time that felt like the saw blades really connected to that feeling. This piece came from that place. I started questioning the meaning of life, asking myself, where do I fit in? How do I fill the empty space that I had inside of me that I didn't understand? How did I get to that place? The words that are written were my thoughts in the moment as I was trying to create this piece. I was moving around my refrigerator in the kitchen, and I found this little carcass of a mouse who had somehow crawled up under there and passed away, but it was completely mummified. And I found that very intriguing. And so I incorporated it in my artwork. It's probably not something many people would want to buy, but remember, I wasn't doing this in order to sell art. I was doing this as a part of therapy to get me through that difficult time. And I felt like because I was questioning the meaning of life, and because I was grieving from a relationship of a 10-year marriage going sour, all of those elements kind of were heightened within me. This piece of art really came from that place. So I found this little guy under the fridge, and I actually wrote this onto the artwork as I was creating it. Somehow in his quest for survival, he lost. His time ran out. Where will you be? Will you have done what you were sent to do? Those were the words that I wrote, repeated over and over and over. The background of this piece was an old sewing machine cabinet that had gotten wet. The coating had started to peel. And I loved the aging and the coloration and all of that was a part of this, almost as a shrine of sorts for this little mouse that lost his journey, his life. I had an old jar. Because he seemed to be mummified, I felt like he needed to be commemorated in the moment. because he had lost his way. I kind of lost my way. So I put him in this jar and I made this piece of art sort of as a shrine. I suspended the mouse with copper thread that I hung from a rusty piece of metal within the jar and hung it with twine onto the background. I then added tall rusty metal pieces at the top to hang it from, and then I included a chain. I found a sketch of a skull in a medical book, burned the edges, and glued it under the jar. It ended up being the perfect companion piece for a shrine for that mouse. And while I know most people probably think it's a little morbid and perhaps it will never find its way out of my home into someone else's, it really commemorates that time in my life where I was really struggling. And I feel like it gave a proper burial for that little guy that lost his life on his. So this piece called Untitled, I had used some old typewriter pieces, some magazine clippings, and then I used some old marbles for the eyes, kind of represent what I feel sometimes is in my head, the confusion of thoughts, the darkness of life when we're all in those dark times. It just felt like it kind of came out of my mind as how I felt in that moment with my struggle. The next piece of art is called Seriality. This piece was fun. I took an old piece of wood that I had, and again, I wrote some thoughts onto that piece. At the time, I had collected Communication Arts magazine, was one of my favorite. I love the elements of design and composition. There was a section in the back that had multiple photographs, almost like stock imagery, really teeny little thumbnails. So I started cutting those out in squares. When I went to incorporate them into this piece of art, my thinking behind that moment was there's so many of us human beings and we all are so interly connected, yet we feel so individualized. There's a common thread because we're human. No matter what your belief system, no matter what your personality, you're still connected to a stranger. And seriality made me kind of focus on the connection, the similarities that we have as human beings. We all feel, we all have a heart, we all want love. We all want to be happy. We need a way to find joy, or we need to be around other people from time to time. And so this piece kind of incorporates all of those elements. Seriality is combination of common ground showcased in different ways. Each little square has a different group of pictures. It's all individual photos of things within groupings. And just like we have our little villages or our little group of people that we have common interests with. I love anything that's imperfect, that has imperfections, because I've always struggled with perfectionism and try to embrace the fact that those things that make us different are what also make us stand out as artists and as human beings. And then I wrote the words on top of it. And that's how seriality came to be.